Hello, Vivians. Welcome to the third channel. Welcome back to What We Hear in the Shadows. This is our second pilot. So we've done 2 out of 4. 2 out of 4. Today's pilot is for Throwback. Now, whilst I wake up my phone, because I'm going to listen to it. Now, Throwback is, the concept is, each week, because obviously we know that Dan has suddenly stepped down, but each week I'll have a new guest on. Beforehand, they will have been given the decade and genre of what they need to watch, whether it's like family, whether it's not just for grown-ups, or children's shows of a certain decade. Now, I also have this so that we have a conversation flowing. Neither me or the guest know what's on our list. We might have the same thing, we might not. Now, because with my TV knowledge, I want to invite people to come and watch these programs as well. I'll tell you where you can, where they're available, or where they have been available, or where you can track down the X available place, because I've thrown down some X available places. We don't know how many programs we've each watched, so my guest might watch more than me, or I might not put some on the list because I thought they would have watched it and then wanted to talk about it. I can do that. So, let's waste no time and start Throwback. Woo! My guest, he's best known. See, you have to get guests that are best known for stuff, because then you bring the knowledge. My guest is best known as the host of Don't Slam, a 2.4 children podcast, and my co-host on Tom's Normal Jockeys. It's the wonderful John D. Collins.
Thank you. Hello, Tom. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me on. Looking forward to this Throwback.
Yes, I'm also looking forward. So now, I think it'd be fair on your part if you start with what's the first thing you've watched?
Very first thing I watched was The Tomorrow People, and it is available on DVD, BritBox, and on YouTube as well. And it was an interesting series. It was a children's science fiction series that ran on ITV from 1973 to 1978. It's basically about a group of people who were essentially born in the future, but have been sent to the past, I think. It's very bizarre. Bear in mind, this is the 70s, and I do like to give it a leeway when it comes to production and the kind of style. The acting's obviously a bit different for TV and film of that era. And as a fan of classic Doctor Who of the same era, which I think holds up relatively well, give or take the special effects, that the production and the acting is still good. I mean, it was only one episode I watched of it, the very first, and I mean, it was really difficult to watch, to be honest. That sounds really bad because it's a cult show and people have a lot of love for it. But I think for me, I just couldn't quite get past the acting. The effects didn't bother me. It was you kind of know what to expect. The set of the sort of interior, it's almost like their base for the Tomorrow People was quite cool. But a lot of the episode was set in a school, which I don't know. It just it's funny because the actual filming of the scenes in the interior of the Tomorrow People's base was quite cool, and reminded me of Blake 7 and Survivors, which I've also seen. I think that was Terry Nation. But I just found it very cheaply made. I mean, it was of the time, but bear in mind, I think because it's children's TV, I don't know if their budget was different or they had to use different cameras, but it was not as slick as I thought other science fiction shows at the time would be, like Blake 7, Survivors, and Classic Who. But it has a massive following, so what do I know?
I have just noticed that I forgot to mention, as a pointer in the beginning, we are talking about 70s children's British programs. I forgot to mention that. And I also now know that our lists are very different, which might be interesting, might not be, which makes more. I actually really like Tomorrow's People. It's really good. I have it in DVD. Now, for fans, like there is a lot of fans out there because it's available. Brand new versions are on Big Finish, so they're all
Yes.
audio dramas. Yeah,
Yeah. You
and
just took this one of my facts.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, let's get onto your facts.
So first, the fact of the first one is they did do a continuation for Big Finish in the late 90s with some of the original actors who came back, and a lot of the original actors are actually retired from acting now, and because most of them were kid actors, and most children actors don't tend to go into the industry as adults, but some of them did go back to the audio continuation. The music, bear in mind, I was saying before about other sci-fi shows, a lot of the music was composed by Dudley Simpson, who composed for Doctor Who and Blake Seven. And the third fact I've got is how I found out about the Tomorrow People was in 2013, the American network, the CW, actually did a remake of it, an American version of it that starred Robbie Amell or David Amell, the one, the not the Arrow guy, the other Amell actor.
Was he the Smallville Arrow actor?
Yeah, he played Agent Miller in the X-Files revival.
Yeah,
Him.
I know what you're on about.
Yeah.
You can use Google.
And then it was cancelled after one season.
Well, similar to that, I think do you know it's called The Prisoner? That's it. So you know The Prisoner, right?
Oh, yes,
The Prisoner had been referenced in 2.4 Children, so for anyone that doesn't understand. Anyway, so the Prisoner was a British program, and then they did an American remake, which was rather successful. And then in 2013, they did an American reboot of their American version in the mini-series for the CW as well. And that got cancelled after one series because it was meant to be a one series.
Yes. CW as are quite fond of rebooting because they did 90210 and other things as well. So I think they're either original or just recycling old ideas.
Yeah. I don't like I've never actually seen any clips of the American version. I don't know if they're knocking about online.
I remember the advert for it on E4 because it was on E4 in 2013, 14. I was still living at home, so I remember the E4 adverts were on, and I just remember googling it and realizing it was a British series from the 70s, and it was the basis was used for the American version.
I'm surprised E4 picked it up when it was an ITV series.
The American version, though, but so I think although it was the Tomorrow People was ITV, I think it was because it was made American. I don't know how rights work, but yeah, E4 picked it up because they did they used to show the 100 as well, so that was probably of their. I think it was on the same night as the 100.
Yeah, but it's probably that because MasterChef used to be on. Well, it's still on W, the Australian version, but then the BBC had a little crack at airing it on BBC Three.
It did, I remember that.
And obviously, since when I first watched the MasterChef Australia, I now hate the UK version because I've seen the Singapore version of MasterChef as well. It's on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
Don't ask me why. It just is. But yeah, so I think that's interesting. That now we will move. Now I'll tell you my thoughts on the Tomorrow People briefly. Then we'll move on because I got very much sidetracked very much quickly. It's what will happen if the pilot actually 101. So I quite liked it. It works really well as a concept. And now, if the fan base is big enough, they might do what they do with Doctor Who. If you're listening to this on Apple, sorry, right. So you can probably see next to the frame there's a box set. This is just testing your knowledge of Doctor Who, but they do the collective box sets, right? For each series, each of the classic Who, and then the interviews. It's like, oh, the best thing you've ever seen. And they update the graphics, so special effects. They update them, and you can either watch the original version with the original special effects, or you can watch the new version with the new special effects that they've added on. And that's like made sure that the laser looks a little bit more real, that type of thing.
Star Wars Special Edition.
Yeah. We won't get into that kettle of fish. But we don't want to upset them. There's too many of them. But I think Tomorrow People could do that because the fan base is still popular enough because of Big Finish requiring the rights and enough people, and it's on BritBox and all sorts. Enough people will see that, and I think it's a brilliant program, and it wouldn't work well now as a reboot because we've got too many time travel programs.
I think looking back, it was definitely I could see when the landscape of sci-fi shows at the time. I could see why it stood out, especially as a kids show. Kids shows are always, I think, a lot more simple, or certainly the ones I grew up with. And what I've observed now are on quite simplistic, but this was clearly more complex. It was, very interesting. And as I say, I always try and give a bit of leeway to the special effects and the budget of the time, but just couldn't quite with this one. Maybe because what I watched on YouTube and the quality was a bit poor. Maybe if I saw it on the DVD or BritBox, it would be a little bit better.
Yeah. Now, to give viewers an idea of how qualified we are in talking about this, what name 2 programs that were on TV when you were the age that you were supposed to be watching children's TV?
When I was growing up, there was Tracy Beaker, and I think The Queen's Nose was another one.
There we go. Now, Tracy Beaker is the one that will I don't know if that's the right action. Will go through all the generations, because obviously they rerun it to Here and High Water and Tracy Beaker returned, and now the Bumping Ground, and then all the Tracy Beaker adjacent stuff with her and a child, and the fact that they released the music years later. I'll name a few. So I'll name 2. We've got Roy, which is which is really funny, because there's a woman, a Welsh woman, and her husband. She's got this daughter, and then she's the first woman in the world to give birth to a cartoon boy.
I've never heard of that at all. That sounds quite fun.
Now it was really good, but when you try and explain it to someone, you sort of have to tell him to go with it, because it makes no sense. And it is on YouTube, so you can watch it. I'll name another, which is the one that really sticks out to me. I'll name 3 actually, because I'm going to get this name wrong. It's called the Mission 2150, and it's about these kids have been told to save the future with a game show, and it starred Stuart Goldsmith, who is a comedian and podcaster. Wow. Who I didn't realise he hosted it until I see his face. It's the best thing ever. And the final one I'll mention is Me and My Monsters.
Yeah.
Now, Me and My Monsters was Jim Henson adjacent, so it's not technically Jim Henson, but it's adjacent. And if you watch the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance Netflix show, but if you watch the behind the scenes program, you can see the red monster in the background.
Oh, right, okay, interesting.
Because they were they were in the studio. In a studio space where they have all the props, and he was just in the background. So the first thing on my list, now that you've worked out where we're at, how qualified we are at this, I'm probably a little bit odd. So let's write my first one. I don't have the years because I didn't go that far, but I have. Are we ready for this? I have Jigsaw that is available on YouTube now. Jigsaw isn't a drama or a action. Well, there is actors in it. It's a live action program and so it's, how do I explain it? So it's a mixture of mime, of the art of mime, and your regular presenter. So this jigsaw is a massive jigsaw with a face on it that is helping you to solve a word. So it's a word adjacent program. So you have to send in a letter giving the answer to what the jigsaw is, and you've got the mime artist miming along several things. So he could be chucking things, and you hear a sound effect of him chucking something and almost knocking out the presenter. She has the most dangerous job of being hit by imaginary objects that have real sounds. So I quite liked it. I've seen it many times before, and it's got the studio is similar to other things that we'll mention later down in my list. I don't want to spoil them now. But my facts for Jigsaw is that the show was aimed for ages 4 to 7, but obviously parents watch with kids, so you can give or take a few years on that. Janet Ellis, I don't know if you know who she is. She left the program in 1983 to join Blue Peter.
She Sophia S. Baxter's mum.
Yes, and she was also on
Yeah.
the Gogglebox, the last series
Yes.
that aired. Jigsaw is the only program. This is like the worst fact I've ever pulled out of anything. Jigsaw is the only program to have a jigsaw as the main theme. That is my 3 facts. Let's work out which fact is the worst one. Number 3. Now, what's your thoughts, if you have any thoughts, on Jigsaw?
I've never heard of it at all. I think 70s shows in general were, well, actually, I'd say 60s and 70s were very innovative for kids' telly and TV in general, I think. There's an era of time where, I think, what was it called? There was a phrase used in the 60s to describe a certain kind of surrealism that I think became a post-war trend.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think things like The Prisoner and The Avengers were examples. I think kids' TV was interesting. Like you had things like, I know this was the 60s, but The Magic Roundabout.
Well, that was also the 70s as well.
It went into the 70s, didn't it?
That was French. That was it was made by these French people, and because it was nonsense and made no sense, when when the UK dubbed it, it was a lot. This is the only program where you can dub it and make your own storyline and your own episodes, because it didn't make sense, but it worked really well. And then they did a reboot. They did a reboot where it was CGI. The UK version was British. The American version was, the film was called Doug and made by Butch Hartman. But the UK version was The Magic Roundabout, and they had a TV show. You can watch it on YouTube, where they have half the episode in English and half the episode in American.
Nice, that sounds good. A good way of watching it. Very jolting, but interesting.
Probably very jolting. Now, because you hadn't seen Jigsaw, we'll move on. Let's see. So the way this, just to give more to the format, if we end up having the same thing on our list, the way it would work is you would give your opinion, I would give my opinion, and you would give your facts, and we'll see if we have the same facts. Now, what is second on your list?
Second is Captain Pugwash. Which I knew the theme tune. Theme tune's been done. It's been on adverts and all sorts over the years. It's quite a popular theme tune. So it's based upon a comic. Well, actually, no, I was about to go with the first fact, but basically, it's short episodes. They're like only 4 or 5 minutes long. It's about a pirate ship run by Captain Pugwash and his merry men. They're about their mini adventures, getting stuck at sea monsters, and I mean they're quite fun to watch. 4 or 5 minutes. I think that's probably the right amount of time for them. I mean, the facts I would say is that, actually, no, I was gonna say it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube.
It's also on BritBox.
Did not know that.
Oh, it's also on BritBox. It's on DVD. And if you search far enough, it'll be on VHS.
Yes.
Continue.
So it started off as a children's comic strip in 1950, and it actually was, there was already a cartoon version in the late 50s, but then it was revived in the 70s. The other fact I found was that Nick Frost was apparently going to play Captain Pugwash in a live-action film version in 2018, but it was cancelled due to budget issues.
Oh, I can see that.
I can see that.
I can see. If you don't know Captain Pugwash's face, Google it, and then Google Nick Frost, and
side by side.
That, I reckon, if he ever rebooted it, get Nick Frost to do the voice.
I saw Nick Frost recently, actually. I went to a convention in Sheffield, a horror film convention, and he did a talk, and I was sat quite close to him, and now I look back, I think, he could have been Captain Pugwash.
I generally thought you were going to say, I saw him in Asda.
If only.
If only, because there's a segment on Sunday Brunch where they just bump into celebrities in supermarkets. Makes no sense.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought they would have got someone else to do their shopping or get it delivery.
Or go to Waitrose. I just imagine that they can afford Waitrose.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. What is your next fact?
Oh, I gave the 3 facts. Sorry.
Oh, did you? All right.
Yeah. So it's I'll just say that the rundown. It started off as a comic strip. The original series in the late 50s. They had some suggestive character names, and Nick Frost was going to play him in a live action version.
Yeah. See, I can do whatever I want in this file. If I want to get confused, I can. So my opinions on Captain Pugwash are that it's incredible. I don't care what these kids are watching now, with their things and their, but don't even get me started on Bluey. I heard that Josh Widdicombe and Adam Hills were going to start a Bluey podcast. That's a cool question. And I was watching it in a lesson once. I was sat in a classroom watching Bluey. Now, I have also sat in a classroom watching Monkey, but that's an 80s program for a different day, and no one understood because. Anyway, so Captain Pugwash has an amazing theme tune, like a lot of programs. New format. If you want to sing the theme tune, fill your boots. I'll be doing that a lot later. So Captain Pugwash is amazing. The animation actually was revolutionary of its time.
Interesting.
I don't think there's many, because Banana Man was in the 80s, so it's like a similar to that. But it's I'll tell you, if you've not seen it, watch it. It's incredible, and all you have to say is Captain Pugwash on his boat, and then you're away with it. I could live off that. I couldn't actually. I could live off Doctor Who. I don't want to upset my own fans, but if there was only one children's program I could ever watch, I'll be happy with Captain Pugwash. Do you know, for viewers who might know, what channel did it air on?
BBC One, wasn't it?
Correct. See, I just right. So my next thing, I don't know if it's on your list somewhere. I won't be surprised. Now, this next one, everyone should know. If you don't know this next one, I'll be really concerned. Let's try and sing the theme tune to begin with. Let's pick a theme tune because it's a long running program. Some hint. Pick a theme tune. Let's go. Yeah, I'll stop there because it's a lot of humming. It is Blue Peter.
Yeah.
Now, Blue Peter, for anyone that wasn't aware, Blue Peter was not dull. Not I'm angry with Blue Peter, really, in a sense. Now I'll get on that in a minute. So Blue Peter is a magazine program for children where you have presenters, especially the episode I watched, being air hostess on a plane, because that was a new thing, really. Planes travel on the commercial ones. You have Blue Peter presenters riding bikes, being daredevils. You have in the 60s. You had an elephant walking in pooing. You had a woman bathing a gorilla, a baby gorilla, might I add. Now, in an interview in the 90s, I think, to celebrate an anniversary of the ITV 70s program Magpie, which was a version of Blue Peter, they said we were the edgier version of Blue Peter. Now, Mel Gedroach, as a child, was on Magpie with the Goodies, a 70s group. Having the Goodies judge a painting wall competition with children versus John Noakes walking near being partaking in a Viking reenactment on bonfire night. What's more edgy, watching people paint or watching someone almost die because he had to go near the massive fire because it failed to light properly? So I disagree with that, but Blue Peter is incredible. My 3 facts for Blue Blue Peter from the 60s to 2004-5 is on YouTube, and the modern Blue Peter is on BBC iPlayer. So let's find out what our facts are. Number 1, it's the longest running children's show around the world. It's been going for nearly 64 years.
Old as my mum.
Blue Peter Purvis left Doctor Who to join Blue Peter, so it's his next thing he did. Someone else, yeah. And in 1971, they made a time capsule that was opened in the year 2000.
I've seen that clip. It's very cool.
Yes, and the famous words, I'll use this once, and I'll use this once. That's a reference to LOLO, Peter fly over people's head. But here's one I made earlier. I haven't actually. Here's one I made earlier. Here's one I made earlier. Right, there you go. What is your thoughts on Blue Peter, and who are your Blue Peter presenters?
Okay, don't hate me.
Oh no.
Oh no. I never liked Blue Peter, but that's probably because of the era I watched. It would have been on TV. I've I follow BBC Archive on Facebook and Twitter, so they show clips all the time of Blue Peter. So I've seen clips of Blue Peter from the 70s. I've seen them interview ABBA. I've seen clips of the Daleks coming on. I've seen on one of my Doctor Who DVDs, the Dalek Invasion of Earth went during the 60s. Dalek Mania, they did a segment where you could make a Dalek tea, which was like a sandwich Dalek or a cake Dalek made out of Swiss roll and chocolate. And it was very cool. I mean, I can totally see why it had such a big impact. I think when I was younger, it's funny, when I watched the old Blue Peter, if I see clips of it, like Peter Purvis and Janet Ellis, I always find the hosts are very of their time. They're well spoken, but they talk. I don't feel like they're patronizing.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, even from a young age, I never liked watching it because I felt I was being talked down to.
Who was on when you were watching it?
I don't want to. I don't want to say.
Well,
Who was it? Who was it? I can't remember their names
was
actually.
it
That's
Connie Hook by any chance?
I don't remember Connie Hook very much in it. I
She's
know she was in it, but I don't think I remember her in the times I watched it.
Well, she's married to Charlie Brooker.
She is indeed.
I
She was in a cameo of 2.4 Children as well.
Wow. Oh, yeah, she was. Yeah.
Cool.
My Blue Peter presenters. I'll list. I've got a list. So Barry Harwood and Helen Skelton were the
Yes.
main ones. I watched it a year before, and then they moved to them. And then I watched it when Helen left. And then I watched the competition they did when Lindsay. Oh, it was a big thing between me and my one friend. Say sad. We were obsessed. He had all the Blue Peter, but we were obsessed with the fact that Dick and Dom were hosting a program where you could choose who the next Blue Peter presenter was.
Dick and
It was
Tom,
a competition show, and it was the Whitley with them down, and they did a live broadcast of CBC in Norfolk, and Lindsay was announced live on the stage in Norfolk.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know they used to vote, or they did that on one occasion. Really cool.
They only did it once, and once later she left. I don't like the new presenters. That's because the new Blue Peter has changed completely because they're trying to battle with. I don't really like social media people on TV unless, like if I was on TV, it'd be different because the way I do stuff, I sort of no one really cares. So who cares? So what we'll do is because I can, we'll move on. What's at number 3 for you? Because hopefully we've got something similar on our list. Because I've realised that you've gone more of an actual route where we were supposed to lead down. Now I've gone more down a route of what do I love? What theme tunes can I sing along to? So,
I'm going to admit this is my last one. To be honest, I watched 3 because I felt like I didn't. Well, some of them were hard to find. I mean, I didn't. Obviously, you had a good knowledge of those things. I couldn't find.
Carried away.
It was so this one I think most people will know of. It was Grange Hill.
Whoa! We've got the same thing on our list.
Yes,
right.
Fantastic.
Right. Now the challenge is to work out what our facts are. Now, I'll say that. Did you ever watch it in 2008 when it was still on?
No, I was banned from it. My brother watched it my brother's 8 years older than me. So when he watched it in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was still not, I wouldn't say it was possibly as good as it was, but it was still going. But I was banned from watching it because it was a show that parents didn't like their kids watching.
What are your before we get on to our thoughts, because we'll get this out of the way. What's your first fact?
That it's one of the longest running British programs in 31 series. Not as long as Blue Peter, but long time.
We've both got that it ran for 31 series. What is fact number 2?
That there was a Grange Hill video game for the Commodore 64 that was made in the 80s.
That's one fact that's different. Before you give your last fact, I'll give one of my facts that in 2021 it was announced that the show was coming back, as some of the original cast were going to be playing the parents or grandparents or teachers. Same with Waterloo Road. What is your final fact?
It had a few it went through three location changes where it filmed. So for the first 7 years, it was filmed at Television Centre. For the next 17 years, it was then filmed at Elstree Studios, and then bizarrely, it went up north to Liverpool for 2003 to 2008 when it ended.
So, give me briefly your thoughts.
It was good. I mean, it was better than Tomorrow People by a long shot. I thought, I mean, it's very of its time, as any show when it's made will be. You know, the kids. Well, let's put it like this: it made me feel depressed afterwards, make me think about school.
Yeah.
I didn't miss any of it. Realize how much I don't. Guys, people who say that school the best year of your life, I'm 27. Adulthood's the best. Just saying. I feel the kids were annoying, so I thought that they were good actors. One of them was Tucker. He was Mark Fowler from EastEnders.
Yeah, and he had his own spin-off series called Tucker as
Tucker as well. Yeah, Tucker's, what was it called?
It was just
Tucker's
called Tucker.
Tucker.
And it was
No,
about
I thought, yeah.
slavery not getting up.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very, I mean, like I say, it was interesting watching it because it almost felt like a documentary, really, because obviously it was about school in that time, and as the show progressed, it reflect changing eras of school. I thought the quality of the film was better, and I think it probably seems a bit generic now, but you've got to remember at the time it was groundbreaking, and then got even more groundbreaking as it went on.
Yeah, and and the creator of it went on to go and make Brookside.
Did not know that. That's
Well,
interesting.
he made Brookside, so the rumors of a Brookside reunion might be happening as well. I quite liked Brookside. It's one of those programs that really struck a chord, and the reason why it got cancelled was it didn't end on it's just he ended it on his own terms because he felt like it had got boring and wasn't as edgy as it used to be, and it was now on CBBC and the way it was all was nobody people watched it. Took a return in the final episode, and it sort of changed. So the film has got to be hard hitting for it to get back into the swing of things because it's like Waterloo Road was of its time and really progressive, and all this Ackley Bridges pooed all over it. I've got my own thoughts on that. I don't like it because it's a copycat. But the new series has got returning characters and has to have the same fondness of the original and also keep continuity. Because the last time Waterloo Road was on, it was in Scotland. So it's the same. Grange Hill. School life now has changed so much. It's hard to write about it because you don't know what's actually what groundbreaking things happening because it's all the world of digital and the world of kids saying words that make no sense to anyone other than them. Even outside the classroom, and even I don't even I'm in college, so same thing. Even I don't understand 50% of what people are saying, no 90% of what people are saying. And
Yeah.
then they ask me questions and I don't answer them because I have no clue what they're on about and I rather just not know.
Yeah, sensible. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think that Grange Hill ended when Waterloo Road was on, because I think with Waterloo Road, because it was, I don't know if it was quite post Watershed, but it was on in the evening,
Yeah, it was on
and it was
about 6 p.m.
yeah, and it was a little bit more edgy, probably more that because it was BBC One and not in the CBBC slot. It could go a bit further, and looking back, some of the stuff they did was, pretty hard hitting.
So many teachers died. They had a teacher falling off a roof. They had a teacher just casually dying of old age. They had teachers being shot.
And then the cooler, everyone
Yeah.
went into the cooler for detention. Yeah, I was thinking about Waterloo Road's revival today because when I heard they bring it back, I'm like, why? But actually, I might give it a go when it comes on.
Well, it makes no sense to me because why would you move it from Scotland? Because it was in Scotland and it had been partnered up with. Oh, I mean, you could make a whole thing about Waterloo Road.
I gave up on it after. I think what I think with school shows about school life is because obviously it's ever changing and there'll always be there might be teachers who stay throughout, but there's always new pupils. I think there's an I understand why, but there's always going to have to be kids who grow up during their school life watching these shows and reflect and enjoy and relating to them.
Yeah.
And I think for people who get older, you recognize that things get a bit repetitive. And I just remember one episode of a new season of Waterloo Road, and I just felt like it started the same as every other series. And I just thought, I can't be bothered with this anymore. And then it
Well,
went downhill and it got cancelled not long later. So, yeah.
I mean, the ending was rather awful. All it did was just pan around the school and had voiceovers of previous episodes. It was an awful ending. But that's why Grange Hill was different in its. It was one of a kind. But I think nowadays, like documentaries about schools were better. So the one that struck a chord with me was Our School, because that came
Yes.
out a year before I started year 7. So I was in year 6 when the first series came out. So I was about to go into it. Worked really well, and then I hated the educating series not because of the thing. It's like educating Yorkshire, educating East End.
Oh, yeah. I
and,
remember them.
and I didn't like it. Wasn't that the program wasn't good, it's because the Channel 4 ripped off the BBC, because it's technically just a more grown-up version of Our School. So I've got the rip off, and then they did so forth. So I think like Grange Hill was of its time, and if they try to it now, it's like so many American films all have school and they're all the same. So you have to find a new angle with it.
I think they just have to make it like what the school of life is like now.
Yeah.
But I think in some ways, I don't know. I just think it was a show that was it went against what you can do on the children's TV slot. I think the reason Waterloo, I think if I had to bring one of them back, I'd rather shows did something original, programs were original. But I think if I had to bring one back, it'd be Waterloo Road, just because it wasn't. I think you can do a little bit more with.
Yeah.
It's not even about being more shocking. It's just being a bit more real, which I don't think you can be. You can't be real in a children's TV slot. Like teenagers in a 6 o'clock CBC show and a 9 o'clock show at the same age will be complete. They won't be the same.
I mean, teenagers in a program on CBC are probably American or Australian these days.
Yeah,
I've done it. I've worked this out. We'll move on in a minute because we've not got a lot of time because we want to stick within the hour slot. Now, I've done a statistic that CBC has now got one or two originals.
really. Wow.
One of their programs they have on there is called We Bear Bear. Now, you could be 4 o'clock watching We Bear Bear, right, on CBC, and then you can flip to Cartoon Network at the same time and be watching a completely different episode of We Bear Bear.
Wow.
They've required Cartoon Network shows, but air them at the exact same time.
That makes no sense at all.
Because Cartoon Network just rerun the stuff all the time. So it's bound to happen. And so it's like mostly American, the Australian stuff are quite good. Even though I'm not supposed to be, even though if I said to someone I'm watching CBC, you'll have no friends. I already don't. But you'll lose amount of anyone that really they'll think you're not right in the head. But so Australian shows on CBC are really quite good, no matter what they are. They're really good. And it's weird because when you look at it, you look at the schedule, you don't see much British. Horrible Histories, but it's normally the new cast, which are awful. And it's nothing really British.
No.
It's always cat, dog, girl, boy, mice, or whatever it's called, which is American, or it's a show that's on Netflix or on Amazon Prime.
Wow, I did not know that.
So the She-Ra, a Netflix original, has been split into parts on CBC, and I don't know how, but what's saving CBC now is quote unquote broom cupboard. So it's like Hacker still being around, still saves CBC because it's a character that's been going for almost 12 years. And the sad demise of CBC must mean that we might be watching the Grange Hill film might never air on CBC, might air on BBC One. Hopefully, they do a U-turn and bring BBC Four ready for extra back. Now, my next one, which we'll quickly whiz through because I got too carried away. But if you've seen any of these, you can chip in. Is let's sing the theme tune. Do 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 do. It lifts its little finger, and a mouse is there. Put his hands together, and a swan is here. Right. So
the clangers.
No, no. The new clangers has got Michael Palin in the voiceover. That's another kettle of fish. It's called Finger Bob. Or in the 1980s, they had a spin-off called Fingernails. Finger Bob was this bloke called, and I've got his name, Rick Jones, right? About Rick Jones. He is an artist. He makes these little puppets and they're on his finger. So it's a mouse, and then he has a whole scene when the mouse is interacting with this cardboard sheep in the episode I watched. And he puts his hand together and he makes a swan, and he has a swan in his finger. And the swan, and he's a mime artist. He's a French mime artist. So there is a voiceover, which I think is him, but it's all his hand, mainly his hand, and you're not supposed to walk in his body whilst he sat in the chair doing that on a table. I mean, nowadays it would look really rubbish. I mean, you watch Art Attack on Disney Junior, and that's awful.
God, that takes me back.
That's patronising. Now, the facts for Finger Bob is there was a spin-off in the 80s called Finger Mouse. On the 7th of October 2021, Rick Jones sadly passed away at the age of 84, and only 13 episodes were ever made, but it got rerun until the 90s.
Wow.
Now, you ask on what program he watched, he would say Finger Mouse, because Finger Mouse was about the mouse itself.
Interesting.
Have you ever heard or seen Finger Bob?
Nope, never heard of it. Only seen it. Nope. Right,
well, we'll swiftly move on. Now, you might have heard of this one, but you might have heard of it on. So I'll do the theme tune, and then when we get to my facts, I'll do other things. Right? A door, a square window. Do 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 do. Play school.
Oh yeah.
Window. Anyway, so Play School was a factual type program where they were a mixture of anything could happen. The episode I was watching, they were pulling paper in the air and having a competition, so you could get the paper down on the ground first. Now, it's a very, very, very amazing program, Play School. My facts is there's 8 international versions, so Australia, New Zealand, Italy, Israel, Norway. The Australian version is the second longest running children's program because it's been going for 57 years. And I'll sing the theme tune for that one. There's a bear in there. Come inside, open wide. It's Play School. And the New Zealand version is a copy of the British version, as in same theme tune, just to use. It's just more Australian. I mean New Zealand. I've not seen any of the other versions because you can't access them online, but it is amazing. Some honourable mentions that I was gonna say, Sooty is an
honourable. I love Sooty, yeah.
Bagpuss, and many others. Finger Bob is available on YouTube and DVD. Play School is available on YouTube. I never got a DVD release because it's one of those that don't get DVD releases. My final fact is Play School originally appeared on weekdays at 11 a.m. on BBC Two, revived on holiday runs on BBC One in 1964, and in 1965 later acquired a mid-afternoon on BBC One. It had a selection of characters which were all amazing. So, have you ever seen Play School?
No, I know of it. I think I've seen clips of it, but I've never properly watched it.
So that's next. Let's sing the theme tune, right? and we're nearly at the end. Let's not fret it because we are missing out my 6th one on my list because it's Grange Hill because it was the same. Let's sing this theme tune. If you imagine if your house is haunted, just go rent a house. You got the girls and freaks of fools. I had to enter ghosts. A mansion of the opera, like a haunted melody. And what you get is a mystery and rent a ghost. See, I'm really sad. I need to get a life. Right. So, this is why we're a comedy podcast. Right. So, Rent a Ghost is on BritBox and probably DVD, but I haven't found a DVD copy to this date. It originally starred Bob Mumford. I can't remember whether that's the actor or the character. Have you ever seen Rent a Ghost?
Seen clips of it. It's very loved. It's proper cool. I know Linda LaPlante was in it,
Yeah.
and Audrey from Corrie.
Yes. It was originally, because it had many changes in its life. It was originally about Fred something, I can't remember his last name, who was a new ghost who started a company where you could rent out ghosts, or if they needed help to get rid of ghosts. So the Jester Ghost, and there was this, I don't know, he was the aristocrat Victorian ghost. Now his character was really amazing. I can't remember the character's name because his mother in the show had died after he was born. So she was about 24, and he was about 45 because she had died when he was born. So, and that's really interesting because you always think that, well, if you've never met your mum, would your mum ever recognise you when you pass over into the spirit world? Whether or not you believe that or not is your own choice. But it's an interesting concept. Well, what do you think on that concept without getting too in depth?
Really cool. I mean, as I say, it's a show that I think had a lot of imagination to it. It's a great title. And people love it now. There's loads of people I know who were like in their 50s and 40s who remember it very fondly, and it's just got a cult following. So I think anything like that is worthy of talk.
They tried to do an American version, but
Do.
but Warner Brothers didn't go ahead with it. The Australian version was going to be similar to the Australian version of Are You Being Served, where they had Bob Mumford go over, and it like, oh, he's been asked. Have you ever seen the Australian Are You Being Served?
I've seen a clip of it on the documentary. I know John Inman was in it.
Yeah, well, he plays the same character, and he goes over because he's been asked by the Australian version of the firm, and it's the same company, but it's like he's been asked over there, and so it worked real. It didn't work really well, and it didn't go ahead. And then in 2010, there was going to be a Russell Brand version where Russell Brand played the main character, and that never came to fruition and crashed and burned. Now we've got our last two. As you can tell, I got carried away. Right, this one, if you want to cry, you can cry, but let's do it. Underground, overground, wombling free. The Wimbles are Wimbledon coming away. People don't, yeah, anyway. So it was Wombles with Bernard Cribbins as the voiceover. Sadly passed away. It was about these creatures that decided that it was fun to mop, like pick up litter, and not really, like they picked up litter in Wimbledon. Now you're probably thinking they're the pre-version of the Eco Warriors. Woo! Well, it came back in about 2019, but not as a program, just as characters that were CGI, so that they can bring them back and be more eco-friendly, and they can promote eco-friendliness. And they could promote picking them litter, and they didn't have to do a TV show because they just did it just so that they can say Uncle Bulgaria wants you to pick up that wrapper you dropped, and they can use the characters more freely and have them knocking about. My facts for the Wombles are: the Wombles were the first children's characters to become a band and go on Top of the Pops. They appeared on Top of the Pops with the song Super Womble. Super Womble, Super Womble, Super Womble Womble, Super Womble Womble. And the Wombles TV show was based on the books of the same name. Have you any recollection, or do you have a memory of the Wombles?
I know of it. I know that Bernard Cribbins was in it. I've seen clips of it on like retrospective shows, about children's TV and stuff. And the thing I always think of with the Wombles is a very off idea, but in the episode of Vicar of Dibley when Dawn French says mentions ABBA, and the character of Alice says, I always found ABBA a bit experimental for me. No, middle of the road, I think she calls them. And she's asked, well, who did you like? She goes, oh, the Wombles, really. They were a great band. And she goes, remember your Womble. That's all I think of when I say the Wombles.
The Wombles is available on YouTube and on DVD. I like to say sad to the past of Bernard Cribbins. Now, the one program that I wanted down on my list, but I couldn't find on YouTube anywhere, was Jack and Nori.
Yes, Jack and Nori. I want to see Jack and Nori. Gary Olson from 2.4 John, the late Gary Olson, did an episode of Jack and Nori in 1995, and I'd love to see it.
If you ever find this, would you review this on your podcast? That episode of Jack and Nori?
Yeah, go on. There's a Gary tribute. I wouldn't say no.
Yeah. You're probably too old for it, but there was a program on when I was younger called Jack and Nori Jr.
Yeah, I remember they brought it back, and I remember there was a big deal about it coming back.
It was basically bedtime stories. Now that bedtime story was invented, Jack and Nori didn't need to exist. Yeah. But it's bedtime stories, but not at bedtime. And Sheridan Smith did an episode.
I know Tom Hardy did one recently, and they watched.
Yeah, he did a bedtime stories on a Jack and Nori Jr.
Oh, bedtime stories like that.
Yeah. Jack and Nori Jr. was a different crowd to bedtime stories these days. They've revived the format of Jack and Nori and did Crack and Nori.
Crack and Nori, what a great show that was.
That was...
Loved it.
That was like adults being inappropriate in the Jack and Nori format.
It was wonderful. I loved it so much.
Yes. And Audible also released a special edition of Crack and Nori for free for Audible subscribers. Now, that's available on YouTube. Now, my final one, which is number 9. We're missing out number 8 because we've not got a lot of time. I know we have got time. Pardon me. I want to keep this an hour, so I'm trying to estimate where an hour begins and where an hour ends. But we have got time for my 8th program. This is Take Heart. This came out before Art Attack. This is the BBC, available on YouTube. It starred Tony Hart. Tony Hart was an artist, and he was the one that used to fight against Morph. He used to attack Morph frantically. And Morph used to get away with it, obviously. Plasticine. Have you ever heard of Take Heart, Art?
No, I've not heard of that one,
Morph?
sorry.
Morph? Do you know Morph?
No, sorry. Terrible.
Yes, very much terrible. The show launched the character of Morph. The big art at the end. So there was big art at the end. That's what inspired Art Attack to do it, because Take Heart did it first. And the show won a BAFTA in 1984.
That's good.
Our final one, we'll do the theme tune for this, and then I'll do a theme tune for something else in a minute, right? Let's not upset anyone. Rainbow of the woods of passing by, rainbows flying high, up the woods and see a sky, of the sky, paint the whole world with a rainbow. Now, my first fact is that Tom, right, I wrote this in third person, has interviewed almost all the main cast
of Rainbow.
Yes. Amazing. Now, Jeffrey sadly passed away. I haven't got a chance to interview Rod or Jane because sadly Freddie's passed away, but I interviewed Ronnie LeJeune, that did Zippy, and Malcolm Ward, that did Bungle and George.
Amazing. Congrats, well done, man. That's really cool. Yeah. Really cool.
What I can say is I've never felt so weird in my life saying to Malcolm Ward, as Bungle, as George, can you ask George if what do you want for lunch? And I said, for instance, a cheese and onion sandwich. So he went along with it. So he stood there with the head of Bungle, the head of George, and then just spoke as both characters for like a good minute.
That sounds really cool. That's amazing. They basically love what they did.
They did, and they're also me fans on Facebook. Now, another fact was in reruns were all the time, and Nick Jr. in the UK bought the rights to Rainbow. When I was younger, aired it all the time.
So you go into it.
and it was amazing. And then they did a reboot. So one of my other facts is in 1984, no, in 1994, the show was brought back by HTV, so a Welsh company, and had a different format to the original show. The changing the costume of Bungle and adding different characters each episode. It was renamed Rainbow, New Friends, and Other Stories. So they moved from the house. Jeffrey was scrapped. They moved to a toy shop, and it didn't work. Bungle's costume was different. Ronnie LeDoux was the only Rainbow cast member to go from day one to the final ever episode. Then that failed, so they cancelled that, and the ratings dropped. And then they did a new version, and I'm going to sing the theme tune to that one because there's a catchy theme tune called Rainbow Days, Rainbow Days. I wonder what will happen on Rainbow Days. And it was a new presenter. Bungle's costume got even worse, even more scary than his first ever costume, and it lacked, so it got cancelled.
Interesting.
And the original was better. What is your fondest memories of My Good Dear Rainbow?
Never watched it, but I know of it. It's similar to Wombles, I think. Sorry, I know it just from clips and not seen the full episode.
So what we've learned today, that British people are not well educated in the TV world. So if this pilot gets picked up, I am here to educate you if this gets picked up, because we've got 3 others. And 3 others? No, 2 others. Because 4, yeah, I don't know maths. Don't ask me about maths. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Whether or not it gets picked up, I will be campaigning, teaching people about children's TV or just TV in general, because we're going to find out now. What is your? Because we've learned you don't know enough about the 70s. From what you've seen, what's your opinion of the 70s in the children's entertainment world?
I think it just was a bit more edgy, I suppose. It was a good range of stuff, cartoons, live action. Didn't speak down to children like they do now, or certainly when I was younger, I felt like they did. And I think TV in general, although I think acting and writing and directing especially has probably got, well, maybe more directing and acting slightly improved in terms of TV performance over time. I think the innovation isn't really as there now.
So, yeah, there we go. That is Throwback. Now, what's next in what we're hearing the Shadow bonus series pilots? Next is more pilots, 2 that are solo pilots. So no guests, no co-hosts, just me. Now I can announce what they are because I'm going to be doing them this weekend. One, there's a podcast called The One Show. Have you ever heard of it? Where they review the one show and take it too seriously. It's a comedy podcast about how ridiculous the one show is.
That's funny.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing one called, the next pilot will be Country File. So I'll be reviewing Country File because it's pretty much stupid. Because you can watch Kerry Pritchard and McLean or Tim Vine herding sheep on a Sunday rather than watch, an antiques program. And the final of the selection of pilots is, here's one I made earlier, where I'll be reviewing old and new episodes of Blue Peter.
Nice. Sounds good.
There we go. Now, before we end, we'll end on a high note. Recently, your podcast, Don't Slam 2.4 Children, came to an end. End is as in it stopped. What's your plan going forward? Because now you've got this platform, you could technically keep the podcast going under a new name or what? What's your plan?
The main episode reviews are done because I've recorded every episode of 2.4 Children now. So that's done. But I'm not planning to finish the podcast itself. I'm hoping to do more episodes of maybe like do quizzes with fans, maybe do a review of Andrew Marshall, who wrote the show. He did a series called Strange. It was a horror show from the 2000s. I might do an episode on that. I'm trying to get more cast on. An interview from 2.4 Children and from Andrew Marshall's other sitcoms. The main thing I'm doing now is I'm working on a 2.4 Children book. So with the podcast, it's been more about the critical review of the series. this book is more to do with the behind the scenes, and so I'm currently getting in touch with cast and crew to organise interviews to get the stories.
There we go. We come to an end, a very sad end. Next, if this gets commissioned, I will hopefully bring more to it. So basically, it will be a format so that we have to have a limit of the show, so we all have the same amount of limit, because obviously, if it's a pilot, I went, do whatever you want. I don't care. So if it does happen, we'll all have to watch the same amount of programming. And yeah, there you go.
Thank you very much.
It has been interesting. Let's see how it works out in the edit. I'm intrigued to know whether or not this works or not. If you were to rate this podcast out of this will never work to this is got a potential of working, that's like a 1 to like a 6, what would you rate it on this mystery scale?
I think it has potential, definitely. Always like a good, you love it. Nostalgia is a very big, popular thing.
Yeah, there we go. That is an ending, and yeah, I'll be back next time. See, as you can tell, I'm running out of ways of ending these videos. And remember, no, I've forgotten.